Theodore Robert Bundy, or as he's infamously known, the monster Ted Bundy, was a serial killer and rapist whose violent obsession left no escape. During his final confession at Florida State Prison in the United States, on January 23, 1989, just one day before his scheduled execution, he recounted his gruesome crimes that had terrorized multiple states, resulting in the deaths of around 33 young women between 1974 and 1978, chilling listeners with every word.
Ted, it is about 2:30 in the afternoon.
It's now approximately 2:30 in the afternoon, and you're scheduled to be executed tomorrow morning at 7. If no further delay is granted, could you share what's going through your mind? What thoughts have you had over the past few days?
Well, I won't kid you to say that it's something that
Well, I wouldn't say I feel in control, but I'm accepting of what's coming. I'm living moment by moment. Sometimes I feel calm. Other times, I don't know what calm even means. Right now, I'm focusing on using whatever minutes and hours I have left to make the best of things, to see what unfolds. It helps me embrace this present moment and use the remaining time well. Right now, with you here, I feel a sense of peace.
For the record, you are...
For the record, you admit to killing numerous women and girls, correct?
Yes, that's true.
Ted, how did it happen? Take me back.
Ted, how did this happen? Take me back to the beginning. What were the motives that caused so much pain and sorrow to so many people? Where did it all start, and how did it come to this?
That's the question of the hour, and one that...
That's the key question that many people far more intelligent than me, have tried to answer, and I've spent years trying to understand it myself. I'm not sure if there's enough time to explain it all. I believe I have a partial understanding of what happened, as I can see how certain thoughts and feelings developed to the point where I acted on them. These were certainly violent and destructive emotions.
Let's go back then to those roots. First of all, you, as I understand it, were raised in what you consider to have been a healthy home. Absolutely, you were not physically abused.
No physical, sexual, or emotional abuse of any kind?
No way.
No, nothing of that sort happened, and I consider that part of the tragedy. I grew up in a wonderful home with loving, dedicated parents. I was raised with love, alongside 5 other siblings, and we were the center of attention for our religious parents who took us to church regularly. There was no smoking, drinking, gambling, or even mild arguments at home. It wasn't a perfect life or household, but it was a strong Christian home. I hope no one tries to blame my family, or believes they contributed to what I became and what I did. I know that as best as I can explain it, and I think it's a message that needs to be understood properly.
But as a young boy, and I mean the boy at 12 or 13, certainly, that I encountered outside the home again, in the local grocery store and the local drugstore, as a softcore pornography, what people call softcore. But as I think I explained to you last night, Dr. Dobson, in an anecdote, that as young boys do, we explored the back roads and sideways and byways of our neighborhood, and oftentimes people would dump the garbage and whatever they were cleaning out of their house, and from time to time we come across pornographic books of a harder nature than a more graphic, you might say, more explicit nature than we would encounter, let's say, in your local grocery store. And this also included such things as, let's say, detective magazines and more those that involved violence.
Did those magazines contain violent imagery?
Yes, and and this is something I think that I want to emphasize.
Yes, of course. I think the most damaging type of pornography is that which combines violence with sexual content. That's from personal experience, of course.
To describe.
Now, walk me through that. What was going on in your mind at that time?
Okay, before we go any further, I think it's important to me.
First and foremost, I want people to understand and believe what I'm saying. And I want to clarify that I'm not blaming pornography for what I did, nor that it alone was responsible. I take full responsibility for my actions. The key question is how pornography influenced that chain of events that led to my violent behavior. Did pornography feed your imagination? Initially, it fuels ideas that eventually build up to the point where you begin to act on them. By the time I reached that stage, I was very close to acting on those ideas.
Now, I really want to understand that. You had gone about as far...
You mentioned that you stayed with these magazines for a long time, where you lived out your wild fantasies, taking time to reach that point before you attacked someone.
Right, yeah.
And it happened in stages, gradually.
It's a delicate subject that developed gradually and wasn't sudden. From my experience, especially with violent pornography, it becomes an addiction. Just like any other addiction, you keep seeking stronger stimuli. You reach a point where just viewing and reading is no longer enough, leading you into a transitional phase where you start wondering if you'll find greater excitement beyond just watching.
How long did you stay at that point before you actually assaulted someone?
Well, yeah, you see, that is a very delicate point.
This was a sensitive point in my development. We're talking about reaching that gray area for many years before actually committing those acts. You don't remember?
Well, I would say a couple of years.
Maybe around 2 years. I had strong internal inhibitions against all those violent urges building up inside me. These restraints had grown within me from my home upbringing, church, and school. There was a voice inside telling me that even thinking about it was wrong, and I held on to whatever barriers were left. But ultimately, my fantasies were nourished by pornography.
Do you remember what pushed you over that?
Do you remember what pushed you over that edge? The moment you decided to act on your thoughts and let go of caution?
Again, when you say pushed, I know what you're saying. I don't want to be further again.
I understand that.
That I was a helpless kind of a victim, and yet we're talking about an influence that is the influence of violence.
Is that the influence of violent media and violent pornography was foundational in the series of events that led to these crimes? It's hard to explain. The feelings once I reached that point were overwhelming, and something inside me broke. I couldn't control it anymore, and the internal restraints that had grown within me could no longer stop me from harming someone.
Would it be accurate to
Would you
call
describe
out-
that as a frenzy? A sexual frenzy?
Yes, that's one way to describe it. A compulsion.
Yes, you could call it that, and perhaps also an obsession. This gave me a criminal and destructive energy. Another factor I didn't mention is alcohol. The influence of alcohol combined with pornography was another motivator in what I did. These two factors eroded all my restraints.
In the early days, you were nearly always...
In the early stages, you were usually half drunk while committing your crimes. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Was that always true?
Was that always the case?
I would say that was generally the case almost all the
All
time.
right, if I can understand it now, there's this battle.
From what you've said, there was an internal struggle between your upbringing, your understanding of right and wrong, and your uncontrollable desires fueled by violent pornography. These opposing forces were at war with each other, and then you let yourself go. Is that right?
Yes. And
Yes, you could summarize it that way. The interview ended, and the next day, the serial killer met his end by electric chair, bringing an end to a bloody, terror-filled chapter that left America's streets in horror for 4 years.